Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. At 1:19 a.m. on March 8, 2014, Air Traffic Control in Kuala Lumpur received a standard radio call from Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. Good night, Malaysian 370. 2 minutes later, the aircraft's transponder was switched off. The plane, carrying 239 people, had just vanished from secondary radar. It was not the last the world would hear of MH370, but it was the last time anyone would speak to anyone on board. What followed was the largest aviation search in history. Satellite ping data from a British telecommunications company traced the aircraft on a southern arc over the Indian Ocean, flying for nearly 7 hours after last radar contact before running out of fuel. The southern Indian Ocean was searched over 120,000 square kilometers of seabed, then 25,000 square kilometers more. Debris eventually washed ashore on islands and coastlines across the Indian Ocean, confirmed as MH370. No fuselage, no flight recorders, no explanation. The most supported theory among investigators is that the aircraft was deliberately diverted and flown to the Southern Ocean by one of the pilots. The motive, if this is true, is unknown. The 239 families on board have received no definitive answer in over a decade. Where exactly is the wreckage of MH370? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the world of history's most enduring unsolved crimes, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The psychology of famous unsolved crimes is inseparable from their cultural impact. Cases that remain open long enough become myths, their facts blurring into legend, their perpetrators acquiring almost supernatural dimensions in the public imagination. Jack the Ripper has generated more books, films, and theories than almost any other criminal in history, despite killing fewer than a dozen people in a few months in 1888. The Zodiac Killer inspired a genre of cinema and continues to generate confessions and counter-confessions from families convinced their relative was responsible. D.B. Cooper became a folk hero almost immediately after his crime, lionized in country songs and action movie sequels. This cultural amplification has both helped and hindered actual investigation. The fame of a case attracts researchers, professional investigators, citizen sleuths, documentary filmmakers who sometimes unearth genuine leads. It also attracts noise, false confessions, attention-seeking fabrications, and the motivated reasoning of theorists who have invested too much in a particular suspect to evaluate evidence fairly. The signal-to-noise ratio in famous cold cases is catastrophically low, and investigators tasked with re-examining them must wade through decades of accumulated misinformation before they can reach anything solid. Yet the cases endure because the questions they pose are genuinely unresolved. The perpetrator was never conclusively identified. The motive was never established. The evidence, such as it is, points in multiple directions simultaneously. These are not merely historical curiosities, they are open problems waiting for the right technology or the right insight to finally crack them. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 departed Kuala Lumpur International Airport at 12:41 a.m. on March 8, 2014, bound for Beijing Capital International Airport with 239 people aboard, 227 passengers, and 12 crew. Last car's data transmission occurred at 1:07 a.m. The transponder was switched off at 1:21 a.m. Malaysian military radar tracked the aircraft making a sharp westward turn before losing it over the Strait of Malacca at approximately 2:22 a.m. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen. Instruments malfunction. Researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered Inmarsat, a British satellite communications company, analyzed handshake ping signals automatically exchanged between the aircraft's satellite communication unit and an Inmarsat satellite. 7 handshakes at defined intervals traced the aircraft along a southern arc into the Indian Ocean. Fuel analysis indicated MH370 ran out of fuel at approximately 8:19 a.m. local time, nearly 7 hours after the transponder was disabled. This placed the end of the flight somewhere along the 7th arc in the southern Indian Ocean. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine a Boeing 777 Flaperon, a wing control surface, washed ashore on Reunion Island in July 2015. It was confirmed by Boeing and Australian and Malaysian authorities as being from MH370. Additional confirmed debris subsequently washed ashore on Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Mauritius between 2016 and 2018. A flap fairing, sections of horizontal stabilizer, and interior panels. All were consistent with the drift patterns predicted from an impact zone in the southern Indian Ocean. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, CSIRO oceanographic drift modeling, using the dates and locations of debris recovery combined with Indian Ocean current data, consistently pointed to an impact zone approximately between 25 degrees S and 35 degrees S along the 93 degrees E meridian. This overlaps substantially with the Australian Transport Safety Bureau's independently calculated search area. The convergence of satellite data, drift modeling, and fuel analysis represents the strongest evidence available for the final resting place of the aircraft. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the Australian-led search of the seabed between 2014 and 2017 covered 120,000 square kilometers, an area roughly the size of England, using towed sonar sleds and autonomous underwater vehicles operating at depths of up to 6,000 meters. Nothing was found. Ocean Infinity conducted a second high-tech search in 2018, covering an additional 25,000 square kilometers north of the primary search zone. This search also found nothing. The black box locator beacon batteries expired in April 2016. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the deliberate disabling of both the ACARS system and the transponder prior to the aircraft's diversion is not consistent with any known mechanical failure scenario. Accident investigation conventions recognize that disabling two independent communication systems requires deliberate human action. Malaysian and Australian investigators have consistently stated that deliberate action by someone with access to the flight deck is the most likely explanation for the diversion, without attributing specific responsibility or motive. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. Truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that deliberate pilot action, that Captain Zahiri Ahmad Shah intentionally diverted the aircraft and flew it to the southern Indian Ocean, most likely resulting in a controlled or uncontrolled impact after fuel exhaustion, is the explanation most supported by available evidence and by the Australian and Malaysian investigation teams. No confirmed motive has been established. A detailed examination of Zahiri's personal life, finances, and psychology produced no definitive finding. His home flight simulator data included a route over the southern Indian Ocean, which investigators found significant. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that a hypoxia scenario in which a mechanical failure caused rapid decompression, incapacitating the crew, after which the aircraft flew as a ghost flight on autopilot until fuel exhaustion, is proposed by some researchers as an alternative to deliberate action. Under this model, the aircraft's final trajectory would be consistent with autopilot operation. The main objection is that the deliberate switching off of ACARS and the transponder before any known decompression event points to prior intentional action, not accidental incapacitation. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that debris drift analysis by independent researcher Richard Godfrey and the CSIRO team suggests the aircraft did not fly straight south after the final Inmarsat ping, but instead turned and flew on a path ending further north than the primary. Search area covered, narrowing the probable impact zone to around 33 degrees S, 95 degrees E. Godfrey's analysis using global lightning detection data to supplement Inmarsat ping timing produced a specific proposed crash location. The main objection is that the methodology, while ingenious, has not been independently verified to a standard accepted by the official investigation. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers working from the same body of evidence reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes satellite ping data from Inmarsat provides the strongest physical constraint on MH370 final flight path. The 7 automatic handshake signals at timed intervals establish a range arc, the 7th arc, from which the aircraft's last position can be derived. Combined with the burst timing offset and burst frequency offset values from each ping, analysts narrowed the aircraft's track to a southern route. The mathematics is internally consistent and has been independently verified by multiple aerospace and satellite engineering teams. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented, confirmed debris. The flaperon recovered at Reunion Island in 2015 was identified by unique maintenance records and serial numbers as being from MH370 Boeing 777. Additional pieces confirmed by Boeing include a flaperon fairing, flap panels, and interior components. CSIRO drift modeling showed that debris from an impact in the southern Indian Ocean arc would reach the East African coast and Indian Ocean islands on the timescales observed, consistent with all confirmed debris recovery dates and locations. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the absence of any distress call, no automated fault messages, and the specific sequence of system disabling, a car's off first, then transponder, indicates the communication systems were shut down deliberately and in the correct sequence to minimize detectability. Investigators found no mechanical or electrical fault that could produce this sequence accidentally. Flight data from the final radar track shows no signs of structural failure or aerodynamic upset before radar contact was lost. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The official Australian search ended in January 2017 after covering 120,000 square kilometers without finding the main wreckage. Ocean Infinity's 2018 search added 25,000 square kilometers. Malaysia officially suspended active searching pending new credible evidence. In 2024, Ocean Infinity and the Malaysian government reached an agreement for a new search on a no-find, no-fee basis, targeting an area further north than previous searches based on updated drift and satellite analysis. Richard Godfrey's independent analysis narrowed a probable impact zone, but it has not been formally adopted. The families of the 239 people on board have had no closure in over a decade. MH370 remains the most expensive and most baffling unsolved aviation disappearance in history. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of MH370, the most baffling aviation disappearance in history, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of MH370 ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.